In September 1942, Viktor Frankl arrived at Auschwitz concentration camp. Within hours, he lost everything: his manuscript, his clothes, his wedding ring, his pregnant wife, his parents. Everything that had defined his existence as a human being was taken from him in a single afternoon. He was given a number, 119104. And in that moment, something extraordinary happened. Not hope, not rage, not despair. He started observing. Because Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist, and even in Auschwitz, he couldn't stop being one. Before the war, Frankl had spent years developing a theory about human psychology. His central argument was this: the primary drive in human beings is not pleasure, as Freud believed. It is not power, as Adler believed. It is meaning. He called it logotherapy, logos being the Greek word for meaning. The theory was that a human being who has a reason to live can endure almost any condition. He had written about it, lectured about it, built a career around it. But he had never proven it. Auschwitz proved it for him. Inside the camps, Frankl observed something that changed psychology forever. The prisoners who died first were not always the weakest physically. Some of the physically strongest prisoners collapsed and died within weeks, while others who appeared physically frail survived years. The difference was not in their bodies. It was in their minds. Specifically, it was in whether or not they had something to live for. Frankl watched prisoners who had given up, who had decided there was no reason to survive, who had lost what he called their why. These men stopped eating, stopped moving, lay down and died with no visible physical cause. He watched others, men with sick bodies and broken health, who kept going because they had something pulling them forward. A child they needed to return to, a book they needed to finish, a person they needed to see again. The body followed the mind, not the other way around. Frankl documented all of this in his 1946 book, Man's Search for Meaning, one of the most read books in human history, translated into over 70 languages. His conclusion was precise. He wrote that everything can be taken from a person except one thing: the freedom to choose how you respond to what happens to you. In the worst conditions in human history, Frankl observed that the last human freedom was internal. They could control his body, his environment, his future, but they could not control the meaning he assigned to his suffering. And that meaning, that internal why, was the difference between living and dying in conditions where survival had no rational justification. Modern neuroscience is now catching up to what Frankl observed in 1942. Research from the National Institutes of Health found that the brain's reward system responds to meaning in ways that parallel its response to physical pleasure. Finding purpose activates the same dopamine pathways as food or warmth. Psychologist Martin Seligman, who built the entire field of positive psychology, placed meaning at the center of his model of human flourishing. Not happiness, not success, meaning. A 2019 study published in the journal Psychological Science found that people with a strong sense of purpose live measurably longer than those without one. Not just better lives, longer ones. The biology confirms what Frankl watched happen in real time in Auschwitz. Meaning is not a luxury. It is not a philosophical comfort. It is a survival mechanism. Here's where it becomes personal. Most people in the modern world are not in a concentration camp. They have food, shelter, safety, entertainment, more comfort than any human being in history has ever had access to. And yet rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide are higher than they have ever been. Because comfort is not meaning. Pleasure is not meaning. Distraction is not meaning. and a brain that has everything it needs to survive, but nothing it needs to live for, will find its own ways to suffer. Frankl wrote that the greatest danger for modern humans was not pain, but what he called the existential vacuum. The feeling of inner emptiness that comes when life has no direction, no purpose, no answer to the question, why am I doing this? That vacuum is not filled by more money, more success, more entertainment. It is filled by something to care about that is larger than yourself. Viktor Frankl was liberated from the camps in 1945. He went on to live until 1997. He was 92 years old. He rebuilt his career, wrote 39 books, lectured at universities around the world, flew his own plane until he was 67. He did not survive despite what happened to him. He survived because of what he made it mean. In Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote one sentence that I want to leave you with. He said, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." In 2026, most people have every how they could ever need. The question is whether they have found their why. And that question